The challengers include in their lineup 4 blues, who in fact are the stern 4, 2 rowers promoted from Goldie last year, 6 from their winning trial 8 and 3 from the losers, 7 different colleges represented, 8 different schools, and all having 2 representatives, Dunn and Stallard. Oxford too have 4 blues, 4 survivors from their successful crew last year, and they really are spread through the boat. Arik Liederdal, Dan Snow, the president this time, Ben Birch from Cheltenham College, and Matthew Smith, their young stroke, the youngest man ever to win last year, but giving an awful lot of weight away to his opposite number, the stroke of the Cambridge crew.
Go.
And we're away. And if they follow Isis and Goldie, they will stay in the centre of the stream.
Yes, and I think straight off the start, Cambridge are being warned. I think they will want to try and push away from the left towards the right, as it were.
In training, I know Cambridge haven't been very good when they've clashed oars. They've eased off on the side that is clashing, and they've moved into the other crew. Let's see what happens here.
I'm very surprised to see a clash so early on. It really doesn't always happen in the first 10 or 20 strokes. This is not good news, and Cambridge are in real trouble. The brown man's lost his oar. This is going to cause them, or could easily cost them, the race.
That is...
And the race has been stopped. The race has been stopped because it's happened before the Fulham wall, and if there's a problem before then, the umpire calling stop the race and will recall both crews.
The Coxes still haven't realised that he's stopped the race.
Cambridge will stop now.
It's a very difficult thing for Rupert there, because I think he may have just warned Oxford before that clash.
No, a lot of people thought there was a danger of a clash this year, but not as early. And it seems rather strange that it should have happened like that.
I think that's absolutely right. The umpire has said that he will restart the crews from when they are level.
The race will be restarted with the crews level from here.
That means Cambridge. He believes that the incident happened in neutral water and that no side was disadvantaged.
Jonny?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that was a very difficult one. Cambridge came over to start with. Oxford probably held their line. Perhaps they followed Cambridge back. When the oars are hitting like that, it stops the power on that side of the boat, so the boats come together even more. So it's very hard to decide whose fault it is once they've actually come together.
Just a slight irony that the man who lost his oar, his blade there, was Colin Swenson from St Edward's, Oxford, lives in Oxford.
He's had a slight history of instance. He got catapulted out of the boat in the national championships for schools. I just wonder if he's damaged the angle of his oar, the gate of the oar. That could have happened when catching that oar like that.
Attention, go!
And they're restarting from the point where the 2 crews came together, and then the umpire was happy that he was giving a fair start. They're pretty close together again as they come down Fulham Reach.
What'll be interesting here is that the first bend actually comes much earlier now relative to the start of the race. They're now only going to do a 16 or 17-minute race.
I think this should be marginally to Cambridge's advantage, coming onto this bend more quickly. But they're obviously giving no quarter here.
Oxford have been probably the faster crew off the first minute or so in training. What they'll try and do after about a minute of the race is they settle down into a pace that they'll go over the whole way.
Now, Isis, if we can judge from their performance, went off at a really tight angle at the point of turning on the Fulham wall.
What they'll try and do here is Oxford will try and hold Cambridge out for as long as possible, and they will do a sudden turn, which will push Cambridge away across to the left of our screen. They will try to take half a length or 3/4 a length just by turning.
And Oxford are turning away now, exactly as Isis did. They did it in pretty classical style, and the blue boat seems to be following suit.
Yes, they did. And unlike in the Guy's Goldie race, I think Cambridge will try and follow them. But you can see even now that Oxford are turning steeply round to the right, trying to make everything they can of the bend. The bend should be worth about 1/3 of a length steered well, but from Oxford's perspective, they really have to get more than that if they're going to stand any chance when they come towards the next big bend, which is very much to Cambridge's advantage.
He's warned Cambridge there again, because Cambridge have come over to try and lean onto Oxford.
I think they're now Oxford pulling away. They've got perhaps a 1/4 third of a length, which is about what you'd expect off that bend. but they're still very, very close. Oxford crowding in because fairly soon they're going to lose the advantage of this first bend, and they're going to have to fight for control of the river as they come towards Hammersmith.
It's very important. Sorry, I was going to say, it's very important here when these blades are clashing to keep hold of your oar, to watch it.
They are intertwining again as Cambridge try to come across, not to be forced into a position of having too much to make up. That's a rather more comfortable position for the umpire and both crews.
The difficulty with this is when the clashing is happening, it's very hard to settle down into a steady rhythm. Neither crew has actually settled into the sort of pace that they want to go for 16 minutes. At the moment, they're both racing pretty much flat out, I would say. Neither looks like they've come to the full sort of length they would like to row a race at. What will be crucial now, I think, is who settles into something first.
Tim Vuger, the stroke of Cambridge to the left of the picture, needing just to establish comfortable rhythm and not be hurried by the fact that Oxford have a slight lead.
And in this situation, I think that's what he's trying to do, is to steady his crew, because as long as he can hold them a quarter of a third of a length down, he knows there's a big advantage coming to them as they slip up towards Hammersmith, because as we approach the Hammersmith bend, they will know that a big advantage is coming their way. Here they are, Cambridge 5 minutes to the mile post. That's a minute and a half outside the record, but of course we've had a second start.
I think one of the things we may notice if we get a better shot is Oxford do not seem to have settled into quite such a relaxed kind of rhythm. We can sort of see it there from the side. You see Cambridge look quite long. The long stroke powers the boat along. The idea is you just put the oar into a chunk of water and lever the boat past that. So the length of the stroke is very important.
I think Cambridge are beginning to go past them. They've just picked up to almost level. They suddenly seem to find their rhythm in the last minute, and they're just beginning to squeeze by.
I think they've also probably just lifted their rating a little there. As you see the bodies move relative to each other, Cambridge are taking a couple of strokes a minute more. Perhaps not.
There we are, stroke for stroke, but I think Cambridge are getting a bit more for their money here. Just that little bit longer and easier. As Jonny was saying, Oxford seem to be working a bit harder for their rate. And in Cambridge, all the emphasis has been on relaxation into the catch. On to the beginning of the stroke, anchor the oar, and push.
Cambridge with just the marginal lead, and this is the point of the race when, from the position when it's all over, most crews say that is where it was won, coming between Harrods Depository and Hammersmith Bridge.
I think looking at the way the crews are rowing here, it's hard to see Oxford winning this. Cambridge do look much cleaner, the blade, it just looks crisper. I think probably most people can probably see it, just a little bit ragged in the Oxford boat, unless they're really a lot fitter and a lot more determined.
And this is where we are, approaching Hammersmith Bridge, and important now for the two Coxes to get their boat in the position that they want to be, particularly for Cambridge to take advantage of the turn. Oxford look as though they're trying to push Cambridge towards the Surrey station a little bit.
And Oxford are way out of their water. They're definitely pushing at that point. In 9 out of 10 races, this is the critical part of the boat race, because it's the turning point of the Surrey bend, and Cambridge will be working very hard now to take advantage of this. Over the next 2 minutes, the bend really does start to move in their favour.
Robin Bourne-Taylor and Michael Bonham in the bow of the Oxford boat. Eric Lilledal in front of them. Ian Whale certainly pulling his weight. Ian Wheel rather, not Whale, Wheel.
If the boats get much further apart, this will be a crucial time. It's always this sort of amount, about 2/3 of a length up on another crew, where the crew behind is absolutely throwing everything at it to stay in touch. The crew in front will be doing everything to try and just get clear, because once they do get clear, they'll get to 2 lengths really quickly. The race will be over if Cambridge can get clear now. So this is a critical time.
You can see how very tight that pier Cambridge steered. Normally they'd be a good 20 or 30 metres to the right. They're really hugging the bend. And one of the big factors now is whether the inside of this bend will offer Cambridge the sort of protection that Goldie seemed to got in their race. Goldie went right away at this point, rode past Isis. Here we are looking at Oxford, struggling to hold on to this bend, and now up to Cambridge.
Look at the flotilla following the race, the two launches of the two universities, and they won't be too happy on the Oxford launch at the moment.
No, I think that's right. In theory, this is Cambridge's bend. Oxford still have a bend to come round the Barnes bend, but if if the crews are more than a length apart, Cambridge will come over in front, and it'll be irrelevant that Oxford have the benefit of that last bend.
Well, let's get a view from a very experienced cox, Gary Herbert.
Very impressive now with the aggressive coxing in the first half of the race, but Oxford really now have to hug this Surrey bend, make sure they're on Cambridge. Ordinarily you would have thought the race is over. I mean, there's a good half a length of clear water there now, but Oxford are a gritty crew. They're a real fighting crew. They've got to carry on in there. If you think now at the halfway mark that the game is over, you're not going to come back. You've got to keep on it, keep hammering it. And these boys, and they're led by a very, very determined president, Dan Snow there. Keep their heads up, boys, and just keep driving the legs down.
It's the Oxford crew that we're looking at with Matthew Smith. Let's make a comparison between the two crews. Length of the finish of the stroke is always a factor that tends to go in Cambridge's favour. But a point I'd like to bring up here, fellows, is the amount of water that's going to meet the crews in the latter part of the race, which this year may well be a factor.
It may do, but if Cambridge carry on going away like this, it's going to be academic.
True.
You know, interestingly enough, Oxford have now actually moved inside the Cambridge line now. But looking at Cambridge, they do look really quite easy. And you can see that they're reaching out, just dropping those blades in. There's Tim Vuga stroking along, very ably backed. There's no doubt having that his experience in the stroke seat is a considerable advantage.
See the difference between the crews there. Oxford are driving it on to try and stay in touch. I think that sums up the slightly different approach to rowing. Oxford concentrate very much on the power element of the stroke. I think Cambridge seem to concentrate quite a lot on the sort of relaxation, being efficient about what they do.
The Cambridge president, Kieran West, believes in the simplicity and the Olympic 80 counted to 10. Let's see where we are as Cambridge seemingly have the situation. That's alongside Chiswick 8.
Just past halfway. It's still a long way to go in this race, and Cambridge have got to get clear of them, otherwise they may find themselves in trouble coming to the next bend. I don't think they'll be complacent though. You know, we talked about Kieran West. He is a tremendous strength in that Cambridge crew, without doubt. An outstandingly good oarsman who came on and on during last summer, rowing 6th in the Olympic 8, and I think he could make a dramatic difference in the latter part of this race, should the pressure come on.
Oxford, although they're holding Cambridge there, we see Cambridge here looking very efficient. Just see the relaxed faces. They just load up the front end of the stroke. I think what may be interesting in this second half is Oxford, we talked earlier about the scientific approach they have to training. See if that actually gives them a benefit. They may be able to hang on. Here they are here. Not quite so relaxed, perhaps not technically quite so good, but if they're fitter and stronger, that obviously is another important part of rowing.
Determination in the engine room of the boat from Ian Wheel and Dan Snow and Ben Birch there.
They're certainly working hard. Their rate's up at over 36 now, and I think they're not actually slipping much further behind at the moment. The question is how much this is taking out of them. So when they come to the bend in their advantage, will they have anything left with which to challenge Cambridge?
Another timing at Chiswick Steps, and as you can see that Cambridge moving away, and the cox is always there with the encouragement and the demands on their crew. Let's hear what Christian Cormack's having to say.
Leave our shoulders out there, stand up each one, don't give them a centre of it. Good, a little more separation, glide, ready, now. Separate off, stand up, separate, stand up, separate. Good.
Now, we're listening as he's improving the rhythm. He's trying to keep the ratio between the time through the water and the time for relaxation right. You could hear his voice calling in time with the rhythm, just trying to sharpen it up.
And Oxford slightly increasing their rate, but just an interesting observation. Don't give them a cent of it, he said. You know, we're in front, but we have to make sure that we stay there.
Yeah, at this point of the race, there's only one thing. If Cambridge do something wrong, Oxford will win. But otherwise, if Cambridge keep going with what they're doing, Oxford shouldn't be able to come back.
Cambridge precisely in the position that Oxford eventually got to last year after a tighter race. They are in a position where the race is theirs for the winning and theirs for the losing. And it really looks as though it's going to be a light blue day. Tim Vuger, who was moved back in the boat, and people thought, are they going to make a change? Is Rick Dunn going to stroke? But he got a better view from being further back in the boat as to the rhythm that was required there.
I think that's right. I think they found the best combination was keeping Rick Dunn in the middle of the boat to link the two together. I think a day's rest for the stroke did no harm. And I think now what seems to happen is Oxford made a big effort along Chiswick to stay on terms, but Cambridge managed to push away as they came off their bend.
See Oxford here moving in. They're moving right in because they've got nothing left to lose, so they're just going to cut right across the bend and hope they can get back in touch. If they can get any kind of overlap with Cambridge, then Cambridge will have to move back to their side. Oxford will then have the benefit of being on the inside of a bend. It's, you know, Cambridge now have seen that. Cambridge have closed the door on them.
Yes, with the bandstand just on the right there that you can pick out. Barnes Bridge right at the top of the picture. And good coxing really there by both men, because Jeremy Moncrief went for the chance, the outside chance that he thought might be there, and Christian Cormack. Presumably Tim Booker would have said, look out, and he just pulled across a bit.
Yeah, that's the trouble with having 8 people looking behind you. You're not going to be able to sneak up on anyone.
There's no sneaking here. But obviously, Christian McCormack, he's a very, very experienced tideway cox, spent 3 years at the University of London, knows his way around this river, but it's going to be virtually impossible now for anyone to catch Cambridge. They've had their luck, though. I think they really rode their luck in the first 2 minutes of the race. It came very, very close, I think, to a disqualification. But now you can see they've got it all to play for. Right up there, reaching out, dropping on. It looks as if they could go on forever. Don't feel like that, I can tell you, but that's what it looks like.
Well, it was Tom Stallard who was there in the picture, said it was only a glitch. These men hoped that they would be able to prove his words false, but for all the effort, and it's showing clearly on the faces. It's not to be Oxford's day. Grit and determination here from Matthew Smith.
It'd be interesting to hear what they have to say afterwards. We talked about the restart incident, because at that point Cambridge had lost an oar. You know, I've been in boats in Oxford's position at that point. They maybe feel, well, that was bad luck on Cambridge. You've got to keep hold of your oar. If you drop it, you know, obviously I'm picking a bit with my Oxford hat on there.
I think Cambridge were quite lucky to be started level, let's put it like that, because they were down at the time of the incident and they seemed to be up when they were restarted.
Rules of the race,
yes.
Chris?
Yes, rules of the race. You know, it was the umpire's decision, and he was on the spot. It was his decision. But my own view is that Cambridge can be quite lucky. I think themselves quite lucky. And
so they've maintained just the 7 seconds difference. Oxford have hung on, shooting Barnesbridge 16:41 for the leaders.
Saw them come out there from the bank because they have to go through the middle arch of the bridge. They're both heading back in now to get the straightest line between 2 points. There is no point being out in the middle of the stream today, as we've said. The water's not going faster. It's like rowing on a big lake.
They're certainly going for the shortest line here.
So Matthew Pinson, I don't think he's too happy a man, although he may not be that surprised.
No, Barry, I mean, I think you picked up on it. I think the controversy was down in the first minute and a half of the race. You know, should the race have been stopped? Should the crews have started level? I'm quite sure that both crews had a massive adrenaline surge having to stop the race after 2 minutes, and it just may have paid off a little bit more for Cambridge, that they were a little bit more relaxed in the second start, and they certainly, you know, you picked it up again in commentary, they certainly looked more relaxed and more rhythmical after the restart, and that's what's won them the race.
And that's the difference as they come round this very telling, very tight bend, but it so rarely comes into play. It's very little that Jeremy Moncrief, the cox of Oxford, can do. There just isn't enough room for him to cut up on the inside, and his opposite number, Christian Cormack, would close the door even if he attempted to do so.
That's right. Oxford are having a real go. They're really creeping up as close under the bank as they could, and I think from this shot it looks as if they have closed. I would have thought a little bit, but you know, Cambridge are in a position to respond. But you know, Oxford are giving it absolutely everything, and you know, you must give it to them. Their basic technique is staying together. It's just not quite as good as Cambridge's.
It's a great shame that we've had the controversy.
I think the difficulty is, as an umpire, you're standing behind the race. There's only so much you can do. You have to rely on the coxes to play to the spirit of the game. Whatever, you know, they have to respond, and also once they are so close together, when you steer the boat, they come in closer, even closer than they are already.
See his tired face even there. This has been a long race by any standard. This has not been easy.
I can smell the brewery on the Surrey station as they come with a little over 250 yards to go. Colin Swenson, Lucas Hurst, the Australian's going to be successful. Thomas Edwards, Richard Dunn, John West, Kieran West, Tom Stallard, Tim Vuga, Christian Cormack. Now the names that will go up on the board and the boathouse as being successful. Won't dare tell about the controversy at the start.
It's the first time and only time I think that's happened in dirt race history. It certainly made history this race.
Chiswick Bridge in the distance, yes indeed, Chris, you're dead right on that. So they come towards the finish. Cambridge, after having their run of 7 ended, they're off again. Robin Williams, Harry Mann have a successful Cambridge crew. Again, Lucas Hurst punching both water and air. Oxford, who did seem to close at the end, and we should pay tribute to their really gutsy run. They didn't have the luck of the stream today, that is for sure, but Cambridge are the victors. Chris Baillieu.
I think that's right, and I think Cambridge had the luck of the day. I'm still of the view that they were treated, well, they were fortunate in the way things turned out in the first 2 minutes, and I think the Surrey Bend was also a considerable advantage, looking at how it worked in both the Isis Goldie race and this one. And Cambridge found their rhythm, which is something they've had throughout their training when things were going right, and that proved to be decisive.
I think that the controversy, or whatever you call it, the incident is a very hard one to do. If there is, you can't. Is it fair to let guys who've trained all year have a race for a minute? Because that's what would have happened. I think if he'd let the race go on, the race would have been over. Cambridge had come to a standstill. Oxford all won by length and length. I think as an umpire, you owe it to people to allow them a chance to have a fair contest. It's one of those events. I just don't think he had a choice. I think he had to stop and restart the race.
Well, I suppose the only other choice he had was to apportion blame, but he decided not to do that.
He decided that, and that is his call. He's in the right place. That this was an incident in neutral water. And the only other choice was a disqualification, because to take them back to the start is not really a serious option here.